Hey everyone, Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com, and today we've got a new flagship from Corsair, the K100 RGB keyboard. What will they think of next? Let's do this.
Are you finding yourself building and repairing PCs all the time?
Yes!
Are you always misplacing your Swiss Army knife that hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver on it?
All of the time!
Well, you're in luck. The eTeknix PC Maintenance Toolkit is here, and it has everything you need to build and repair PCs. It even has an Allen wrench for custom loop fittings. Yes, it actually does have a use. Head over to the eTeknix store to find out more in the link in the description below. Tweezers are sold separately.
So, the Corsair K100 RGB. Basically, it's the successor to the K95 XT Platinum. And, well, you're going to be in for a shock because it costs, wait for it, $230 or £230 in the UK. So I've got to ask myself, are you really getting £230 worth of keyboard? Who's going to buy it? And, well, what does it actually include? So comparing against the K95 Platinum XT, it does have the similar kind of durable aluminium frame. And with the lighting, it does make for the perfect centerpiece for your gaming setup. So to start with, it is a full-size keyboard. I mean, it's bulky, it's large, it's pretty damn huge in all honesty, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Anyone who's ever had a Corsair keyboard before will instantly recognise it, and I guess bigger is better, so when it does come to it being bulky and chunky, well, that just kind of adds to the quality, right? So some of the functionality that we saw on the K95 has kind of moved over to the K100. I guess Corsair believe in the whole, if it's not broke, don't fix it thing. And that comes down to the braided cable. It's extremely durable, solid quality. Something that I've never really had problems with on Corsair keyboards in the past. So again, why fix it if it's not broken? At the end of the braided cable are two USBs to give you functionality to the keyboard and the lighting, as well as a USB pass-through, which is especially handy if you've got a mouse and you want to try and sort of clean up your cable clutter just a little bit. On top of that, the keyboard on the underside does have plenty of cable raceways, so you can actually route your mouse cable all the way through there. You don't specifically have to use this for a mouse. If you had other products on your desk, such as an Elgato Stream Deck, the cable should fit in there quite nicely. You will find that the cable raceway itself isn't exactly the thickest, but you should be fine for most peripherals out there. You may also remember that Corsair brought out a new product this year called the iCUE Nexus. And yes, you'll be pleased to know this keyboard is fully compatible with it. It's going to clip on there with ease. So on top of the keyboard, you do get this really nice wrist rest, and I like it, but there's certain parts of it that I don't like as much. So to start with, it's very, very comfortable. I mean, it has a really nice kind of foam springy material, and that stems all the way from edge to edge on the whole wrist pad itself. Well, it has these magnetic bits, and while I like the idea of it, the fact that it can easily clip onto the keyboard, they do feel a little bit flimsy, and I don't know, maybe over time these may end up breaking. You also find that it's got this weird kind of, I'm going to call it Toblerone-esque design on there, which is very similar to what we saw on the 4000 series cases that I reviewed a little while ago. The other similarity, I guess, to the 4000 series case is the Corsair logo, which I do like. It does look very, very clean, but the fact that it has that yellow square on it, I already complained about this on the case. I don't want yellow if I don't want yellow. Stop giving me yellow! So let's talk about the keycaps. Well, the good thing here is Corsair have actually listened to the community. They've upgraded them ever so slightly. So now we're talking 1.5mm PBT double shot keycaps. This means that even if you've got dirty, grimy hands and you're a hardcore user, these are still going to last the test of time, which is really good because Corsair do claim usage for over 150 million key presses. Pretty damn impressive, if you ask me. Just like the K95, it has got the G keys for all of your extra macros, but you will find these haven't actually got the same double shot keycaps on there. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing because in reality, you're not going to be using these keys nowhere near as much as, say, the WA, S and D keys. Speaking of WA, S and D keys, they do actually give you some extra keycaps inside the box, which, well, these are very similar to the G keys, so I'm not sure how they're going to last over time, but they do look very, very nice, and they are ever so slightly angled on some of the keys, such as the A and D. They kind of come up a little bit at the edges, and it feels really, really nice to use in them long gaming sessions. The other thing that you will find with the keycaps in general is they've actually changed the font on the whole keyboard. And while most people probably wouldn't even notice, I did see it and it just looks a little bit nicer to look at now. The other thing they've changed is the whole bottom row of the keyboard is standard. So for any keyboard aficionados out there, you're going to be able to change this to whatever you like. Now, one gripe that I have had with Corsair keyboards in the past has been mainly on the spacebar as well as the shift buttons, basically the larger buttons. They generally have, I don't know, a little bit of stability issues, but it seems like that has completely been fixed on here. Maybe that's down to the new form of switches that are on here, which we will talk about in a little bit, or maybe they've just added some extra stabilization to it. Whatever they've done, it seems to work. So talking about the switches, well, generally in the past Corsair have gone with Cherry MX, and this keyboard is no different. You can actually buy the Cherry MX Speed switches, but the one that we've actually got here has got Corsair's new OPX switches, or optical mechanical. Now, I've seen many brands try and do their own thing over time, and well, it's never really worked, but I've got to admit, after using this, even for the short period of time that I have been using it, well, I'm pretty damn impressed, and I think I might be converted from Cherry MX Reds over to this. Now, a lot of eagle-eared viewers are actually going to be wondering how these particular switches kind of compare against other switches out there on the market. Well, I'm a massive fan of Cherry MX Blues. The problem is they are stupidly loud. That's why I've gone for sort of, a nice middle ground of the red switches, which I like because they're not too loud and they still give me some really nice kind of tactile feel. Now, these are actually a lot quieter. They seem to have a little bit more of a bass to it, so it's not so much of a high-pitched clunk when you're clicking on it. But make your own choice. Have a listen. So apart from the main keycaps and everything aside, what other functionality does this keyboard have? Well, it actually has this weird kind of mid area, which is really nice because when nothing is enabled, it just looks glossy and doesn't really look like a screen or a panel or anything like that. But as soon as you start pressing the number lock, the scroll lock, keypad lock, or even the Windows lock key, you'll find that just this really nice LED comes through, and it's not too sort of glaring and in your face. It's just nice and subtle, but enough to sort of notice that, oh, this is on. In terms of the volume scroll wheel that we all know and love on previous Corsair keyboards, it still has that, but it's kind of been upgraded a little bit. The quality of the material seems a little bit better. Even the mute button itself is a little bit flatter and just has a slightly better feel to it. And of course, it also has RGB on there. So the other functionality on this keyboard in terms of buttons is actually now in the top left. It has an iCUE button, but don't be fooled, it's not all about RGB and lighting. This is actually a multifunctional button and probably my favourite feature of the whole keyboard. So to the left of the button is a profile button and to the right is a Windows lock button. You can actually control what the Windows lock button does in the iCUE software, but for the most part, it basically turns off the start menu button. So when you're playing games, you're not going to accidentally alt-tab or anything out of your game. Now, the iCUE button itself actually serves as a bit of a multifunctional button. So as standard, it has 4 modes. The first one being blue, which controls the brightness of the LEDs of the keyboard. Green, which is for track jogging for your music, so rewind and fast forward. White, which actually skips through tracks. And then red is for macros and allows you to record them on the fly and assign them to the G keys. Now, when you go into the iCUE software, you actually have a full section devoted to this. Admittedly, they brand it under performance, which is a little bit of a weird heading, but within there you can just add functionality after functionality. It really is endless, and you can then assign any color on the RGB spectrum to that particular button. So over time, you'll remember what blue is, what green is, what white is, what purple is, and so forth. It really does give you absolute full kind of flexibility and functionality over, well, anything you can do in Windows. Now, if you don't like using the iCUE software, obviously you can do lots of things on the keyboard itself without utilizing the software. Some people just don't like installing iCUE software for their keyboard and then maybe an ASUS piece of software for their motherboard and so forth. They want to do everything and kind of set it and forget it. Well, you can do that. Using the function button, you can actually control all of the lighting effects to a certain degree using just the keyboard itself. So with the keyboard to sort of one side, the main area of this, because it is Corsair, is all about lighting. I actually remember being at CES and joking around with our rep of, well, where are you going to actually have RGB on the next keyboard? Because surely you've fulfilled everything. And they went, just you wait and see. Well, I guess now is that time because they've kind of put RGB in areas that you pretty much wouldn't expect it to be. So you may remember on the K95, it actually had a bit of an RGB strip just above the function buttons, so kind of sitting up here. Well, that's actually gone now. Instead, they kind of moved it. So now we have an RGB strip on the back, which I'm a little bit unsure about because, well, why do you need it there? Who's going to see it? But from our testing, it actually does emit quite a nice little glow and bounces off the back of other components, such as your monitor, stand, and things like that. It does actually look quite nice. So on top of that 22 zone RGB lighting on the rear, there's actually 2 zones on the left and the right. So 11 zones each, and this allows you to kind of have RGB expelling out the side of it. The only real area they haven't put RGB is down the front. I know, I've probably put my foot in it now. K100 RGB, yes, it's probably going to have a ring going around the whole thing. And yes, obviously being Corsair and being iCUE enabled, that does mean that you can synchronize it with the rest of your system, if it's iCUE enabled as well, or even with some of the latest games out there. If you haven't tried this with the Division 2, definitely go and check it out. It's absolutely amazing. It's such an immersive experience. Seeing the keyboard light up when you get shot, it's breathtaking. So the keyboard also has 8 megabytes of internal memory. That means you can store hundreds, and I mean literally hundreds, 200 profiles for the lighting. You can also store down the profiles for each individual game that you're playing and switch between them using macro keys or even that iCUE button. So this allows you to sort of go into one game, go into another game, switch over the profiles, and the keys will literally be binded to whatever you've specifically set for that particular game. It's really handy if you are a hardcore gamer and you don't want to have to keep switching things in software or going into the game and doing all your key bindings all over again. It's just literally press one button and away you go. Now, hardcore gamers aside, obviously streaming is big business at the moment, and you'd be pleased to know that on the K100, them 6 macro G keys can actually be integrated through Stream Deck. So anyone who has a Stream Deck and you'd know how kind of the functionality of it works, it's really, really nice having all that extra functionality as a streamer. Well, now you don't even need the Stream Deck, you can just use it on your keyboard. I'm kind of hoping that maybe on the next keyboard that Corsair bring out, it actually has maybe some Stream Deck buttons with the little screens on there. That would be really cool. But I do kind of have to wonder, is it going to bump the price up even more? So for any fast-paced gamers out there, you'll be pleased to know that this keyboard has a 4000 Hz polling rate, or 0.25 milliseconds. This means that compared to standard gaming keyboards out there on the market, this is actually 4 times faster. So from when you press that button to when the actual action happens in the game, it's 4 times faster than a conventional gaming keyboard. Now, while this all sounds very, very good on paper, and I'm sure Corsair have done all their own testing, based on my own experience, you can't really notice a difference. I mean, I think a lot of it is down to the whole, what can the human body actually sort of feel and react to? It's very much like, you know, the human eyes can't see above 30 frames per second. That whole argument. So I'm kind of eager to see how people get on with this, and I don't know, maybe to see if they do find themselves being a better gamer as time goes on. I mean, one area that I can see this actually being really successful is in MMO-based games, where you have to literally smash hundreds of buttons in quick succession. Maybe that's where this is really going to come into play. But is the average MMO player really going to spend $230 on a keyboard? Probably not. So when I started this video, I did kind of come in thinking, this is a very expensive keyboard. It's probably the most expensive keyboard that's ever existed to this date. So really, it's got some massive boots to fill, but I kind of feel like it has. I mean, durability wise, has it got it? Well, yes, it's Corsair. The K95 had the durability. This just kind of stems on from that. Has it got the functionality? Definitely. It's probably got more functionality than it even needs. I mean, 200 profiles, the ability to add different buttons in the form of one button and just have it as different colors, really just gives you endless possibilities. It's absolute craziness how much functionality Corsair have actually put into this. So when I first went into this, I thought, okay, this all sounds very good on paper, but yes, it is very expensive. But after using this, even for the short amount of time, I've got to admit, this is probably the best keyboard in the world. And as a Cherry MX Red user, and I said this earlier, I'm probably even converted. So I'm going to have to do some more testing with it and see really if it's going to switch me from my Asus Strict Scope, which I absolutely love, over to this. The only thing maybe I don't like about it is how big in comparison it is. I'm not a massive fan of having these big areas up there. But the fact that it's given me this extra button, which just opens up a world of possibilities, yeah. Is it worth $230? Well, yeah, it is. Probably is the best keyboard in the world so far. There you go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know exactly what to do, and I will see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.